Welcome into part 2, I guess, of
Maybe.
Red Zone Talk, episode
Part two,
15.
maybe part one. Who knows?
Yeah, we're trying to finish up part 1 for you folks, and recording went awry on us, frozen screen, the whole nine. So hopefully it's out. If you see it, go watch it. It's pretty good. I thought trivia was okay. If you don't see it, we do apologize. We'll catch up on the rest of it later. We're not going to spend some time talking about it because I don't want to waste 5 minutes of your time if it is up right now. So we got some headlines to talk about before we jump into our bets.
Yeah, obviously no episode last week with it being Thanksgiving. Took some time off to spend with our families and enjoy that holiday. So we got quite a bit to talk about here.
Heck yeah.
The one I wanted to talk about is I feel like probably pretty important to you and I equally here. Frank Reich was fired as the head coach of the Carolina Panthers, and they did a lot
Yeah.
of cleaning of house here. They've not only did they fire Frank Reich, they fired their offensive coordinator, who I can't remember his name all of a sudden.
They fired McCown too at quarterback's coach,
I
right?
was about to say I know they fired McCown as well, which I was shocked at.
Yeah, I agree.
Thomas Brown took over. It looks like.
I thought Jim Caldwell was still going to be like an offensive assistant or something. I'm surprised he wasn't the OC afterwards, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Oh no. Maybe Thomas Brown stayed. Maybe they fired Josh McCown and somebody else. I don't know. Yeah, I was kind of in shock. I don't know. I mean, we kind of thought this team would be better than they've been for sure. I think I had them at 6 wins. I want to say you had them somewhere in that similar ballpark, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think maybe down at 4, but like the expectations were not super high for this team, right? Like we were not expecting a playoff season. We had the expectation they might challenge for the division, but that's because 9 wins could win you that division on
True.
average usually.
Yeah.
My main takeaway is that David Tepper's kind of not that this franchise was really ever in like such a great high standing at any point in its history, in its short history, but he's kind of driving it into the ground as of late. You have to be patient with these things, right? I understand you don't want to be the Chargers and how patient they've been with Brandon Staley, right? A lot of people think he should have been gone last year. We think he should be gone now. Like, you cannot expect Frank Reich to come in, even with the number 1 overall pick at quarterback, and just be like, I don't understand why we're not winning 9 games, or like even 6. I understand. They only got their first win 2 weeks ago, right before last episode, I think. Whatever. They have 1 win on the year,
and they beat the Texans too, which is a pretty good team.
Pretty damn good team from what they've played. Now, again, at the beginning of the year, if we said that, you're like, oh, that's not an accomplishment. CJ Stroud was an MVP candidate 2 weeks ago, and is arguably still in that conversation just because no one else has really jumped it. But you cannot expect results right away. If you keep hitting the reset button, you're never going to get off the ground, I get it. Maybe you had a couple engine failures at launch, but if you scrap the entire project every time you have one engine failure, you're never going to get off the ground. And that's kind of where we're at. This is the second year in a row where they fired their head coach in season. I think we all kind of agreed that Matt Rule was probably the right move to move off of last year. I like Matt Rule as a guy. The scheme wasn't great. I would have loved to kind of see what he could have done with Miles Sanders this year. But the bottom line of this is when you look at that roster, again, we thought they might challenge because Frank Reich is a damn good coach, and 8 to 9 wins could win you that division.
Yeah.
The offensive line is not good. Like, Taylor Moton is okay. Ike Mekwonu kind of looks like a bust. He hasn't been great for a guy who was drafted in the top 10. And then your weapons, Miles Sanders ran for 1,200 yards behind the best O-line last year. Again, I just stated how bad your O-line is, so he's struggling. Adam Thielen's actually had a really, really good year, but your best receiver is 33 years old, and it's distracting to me when you trade DJ Moore in the offseason, and the first 6 weeks, the main story out of Carolina is, man, I really wish we had a number 1 wide receiver for Bryce Young right about now. I'm like, wow, if only you would have had one 4 weeks ago, right? Now, again, might end up netting you a pretty high draft pick.
No.
Well, no, yeah, the Bears are starting to win. So you're not
Bear,
even getting.
other way. Bears have their pick.
Oh, yeah. Wait.
Yes. Bears have Carolina's pick. That's how the Bears have 2 first rounders this year, friend. Carolina was
Yeah.
drafting 10th and they traded up to first to draft Bryce Young.
Ugh.
They gave up last year's 10th pick and then their pick this year and DJ Moore and some other stuff.
Jesus Christ.
So they don't even have a first rounder this year. Yeah, to kind of give
That's bad.
Yeah, that's not a good thing.
That's not good.
Yeah, I want to approach it from a couple of different angles. I mean, first I want to talk about a little bit of what you talked about. David Tepper, the owner. I'm kind of surprised he's taking this method. Before this, he was a minority owner with the Steelers organization. And that's an organization that has had 3 head coaches. Like it's insane. Like they've had 3 coaches in our lifetime.
Yeah, and remember, they fired Canada. We talked about that a bit. The last time, it's only the second time in team history they fired a guy in season. You know, do you know the last time, like who it was?
I sent it to you.
Yeah. It was a fucking partial owner fired himself because his team was bad.
Bad, yeah. Like in like the 40s or something.
So technically, it's the first time they've ever fired somebody in the middle of a season.
Yeah.
If we're like, let's be honest, I'm not counting the first one. Fuck that.
Yeah.
That guy came from that organization. Is like, fuck this guy after 11 games. Like, I don't get it.
I've seen a lot of people, and it doesn't mean David Tepper's going to be a bad owner, right? Like this is a fork in the road, and for an owner, right? There's 2 directions you can go. You can end up being, who is the Washington owner? Why am I blanking on his name?
Dan Snyder.
Dan Snyder, right? You can go the Dan Snyder route and be a terrible owner forever, and people will pray to God that you sell the team. Or you can kind of go the Jed York direction, right? People don't really remember how rough that was in San Francisco. He comes in, him and Harbaugh aren't getting along. They end up firing Harbaugh, even though he took him to a Super Bowl and they had a lot of success there. And then they had a year. Who was the head coach? He was the linebacker there for like a year. He was the coach. He benched Vernon Davis. God, what was that guy's name? Can't remember. Oh no. I'm thinking of the wrong guy even. But it was Tallulah. Was it Tom?
Yeah.
They had Tallulah, and then the next year
Rice is screaming at his fucking mouth.
Yeah. Right, I'm thinking of Mike Singletary when he was their coach. That was before Harbaugh.
Yeah. So Harbaugh, and then it was Tom Sula for a year, and then the old Chip Kelly year as well.
Kelly year, yep. And then Jed York was like, "Oh, I'm got to simmer down with these 1-year coaches." Brings in, gives Kyle Shanahan a long deal. Same thing with John Lynch. Gives him a long leash. Gives him some stability, right, to go out and make decisions. And I think David Tepper's got to hit this, right. He's gonna have to throw, because I don't know if you read the report. There's expected to be anywhere between 8 and 14 openings this year.
Yeah, I saw that. Which I'm honestly not super surprised with how the league's going, because again, we talked about even the most ironclad of coaches were brought into question for the first time ever this year. Yeah. This is the first year in forever, if ever, that we've ever talked about Bill Belichick or Mike Tomlin possibly getting removed. Yeah. Tomlin has since quieted it. Belichick's now looking more like a trade than a cut, but still,
who knows how that's.
Neither of those things have ever been brought to the table before this year, and we talked about them, and they were real stories for a while. So I think it might be closer to that 12 to 14 range.
Yeah, they're expected to be a high amount of openings, right? And if you're Carolina, you're going to be at the bottom end of that scale, right? Like,
not an attractive job.
I would argue Las Vegas is a more attractive job at this point than Carolina is.
I would agree.
And I mean, Las Vegas has weapons. They have Josh Jacobs. They have Devontae Adams, right? Like there's some pieces there that makes you go, I could go coach there.
Nothing against Bryce Young at all. I have the choice at quarterback. The choice alone outweighs that more often than not, right? Unless you were really just that big of a Bryce Young guy and you want to go there to be with Bryce Young. That's the guy they need, truthfully. I need to.
All right. Well, there's going to be a random jump cut there, but we're not going to acknowledge it. We're going to kind of keep going on here. But yeah, I think they're going to have to offer a lot of money to a head coach and a GM this year, and it's going to have to be they need to go out and get somebody who is going to be in it for the long haul, right? Like I think this is a team that's really interesting for like a Jim Harbaugh type. Um, Pay Jim Harbaugh a ton of money and say, listen, Jim, you pick your GM, you get a guy that you like to work with, and we're just going to kind of let you run the thing. We're going to give you a 10-year or 7-year contract. We're going to give you a Matt Rule contract, but we're not going to fire you like we fired Matt Rule. Um,
Josh McDaniels, next
yeah,
head coach of the Panthers.
no,
No.
but somebody who's established, who knows what they're doing. This is not a team that can take a flyer, right? You can't take a Ben Johnson and miss. But I don't
Yeah.
think. But like, this is the other issue. The reason that they have to go with someone like Harbaugh, somebody like Ben Johnson is going to have a couple of options of where he wants to be a head coach. Why in
Not
the hell would you pick
yeah,
Carolina?
not a couple. Probably all of them. Like Ben Johnson, I think, is probably calling the shots on where he gets interviews this offseason. Like
Yeah,
14 openings. If he wants to interview for all 14 of them, he'll probably get a fucking interview at all 14 of them,
yeah,
truthfully. Um, I think the worst case scenario for them is trying to pull somebody out of the booth. Greg Olson, I love him. I don't know how he's going to be as a head coach. I'd love Greg Olson to be great as a head coach. I think it'd be an awesome story. It is not the time in the franchise's history. Like last offseason, right? Frank Reich goes elsewhere. You want to pull Greg Olson in, give him the Jeff Saturday treatment. You fire him after a 10-1 start. Cool. You have fired two coaches in back-to-back in season. You cannot pull a guy out of the broadcast booth and put him on the sidelines. Like, this would be the worst time to go after a John Gruden or bringing in Greg Olson or whoever the hell it is. Like, you need a guy that has been around football, either at the college level, at the NFL level, that is established. It's almost like they literally just fucking fired the guy we're talking about.
yeah.
All of the things that we're saying right now are Frank Reich, and they just fired him.
To a degree, right? Like I think
Somewhat.
we liked Frank Reich a lot, and I still do like Frank Reich. I think he lands on his feet. I don't know if he's ever an NFL head coach again, but he's gonna go be an assistant head coach for like the Eagles or something like that.
I
Like we,
think if he doesn't land, I don't think he's a head coach next year for sure. He might be a coordinator. What I think it would be best for him is just doing the Doug Peterson / Mike McCarthy. Take a year off, go coach high school football if you want to. Just take a year away from the NFL, rejoin the coaching cycle next offseason, and he probably gets another head coaching job, I think.
it's hard.
But
The third job's always the hardest to get without a Super Bowl.
especially after a 1-10 start. Like the optics are not great from this
Yeah,
Carolina season. I don't want to make it seem like Frank Reich is completely innocent in this 1-10 record. Obviously, he has a lot and definitely a bit to do with it. But if you asked me who the main problem was there, I don't think there is a main. It's David Tepper firing guys 11 games into the season,
yeah,
but there are a lot of factors. It's not just Frank Reich, right? Whereas you
yeah,
can look at other coaches and you're like, you're the fucking problem. Like it starts here.
yeah. I think they have to go out and get somebody with a proven track record, right? You
Yeah.
can't you can't take flyers on anyone that's just not you don't have that leeway at this point, right? Like you might ruin Bryce Young before he's even savable.
I think the dream scenario, because I think Harbaugh is a bit of a long shot, truthfully, because I think he's another guy that's going to demand like 14 jobs open. I think he gets an interview at least 12 of them, right? Like I think he could probably call the shots of where he wants to get an interview at. Brian Flores is another guy that's going to get a lot of looks, though,
Maybe.
like.
Yeah. Flores will get some looks. I don't
But I
I
don't know. I don't know how I feel about him with Bryce Young after watching the
yeah.
stuff with Tua. Like,
You don't want him with a young QB, right? Like I just
yeah,
don't think the fit is there. Um and you want somebody who has been successful. Like not just 10-6 successful. You want a guy who has been Super
to
Bowl
Super
level.
Bowls.
Yes. Got like a guy like Doug, like if a Doug Peterson was out there, like that's the kind of guy I'd want. Like,
Yeah. Kind
and
of.
I know you hate Mike McCarthy, but a Mike McCarthy-esque kind of guy is the kind of guy I would bring in for this job.
Yeah, and I think that would be like I think that'd be a good hire for them because it's all about the expectations of it, right? Like the reason I've always hated McCarthy in Dallas is what do Dallas fans want and expect every year? A playoff run and hopefully a chance at a Super Bowl, right? Whereas McCarthy feels like you're 10-6, we're going to do damn good, but it's probably not going to get all the way there, right? Put that guy in Carolina, he's exceeding expectations at 10-6 and a divisional round playoff run, right? So I think you negated this question, but like Jim Caldwell already on staff, maybe promoting him up to head coach. Like he hasn't had that Super Bowl run success, but an established guy. The Lions were not terrible with him, even though that
A
they
guy
fired
who
him.
can turn, like, he's a guy who knows what it takes to turn a franchise around. So I don't hate a guy like Jim Caldwell. Like, I think that's kind of the guy I'm talking about, right?
Yeah,
Is a guy like that who took over a terrible franchise, made him better. And it wasn't chaotic when he did it.
yeah,
Like
no, it
no,
wasn't.
yeah, it wasn't a mess. Like Flores, it was a mess in Miami, right? Like Ryan
Yeah.
Fitzpatrick was playing, and then Tua was playing, and then they couldn't
They were
like
going
land.
drive for drive in the NFL. You're like, what the hell is going on? This
Yeah,
is not
it
college.
wasn't a good look. So
No,
yeah, I think it'll be interesting. That's the best way to see. Yeah,
I think
and they're gonna have to pay. Like it's gonna be they're paying two guys not to coach right now, which is wild to say, and they're gonna have to give a third guy a lot of money to want to come coach.
because yeah,
It's still an NFL job. Someone will take it. It's just who can you get?
Caldwell might be the only thing at that point, because all those guys, you either may not be able to pay him enough, or maybe they're going to find the better job, and Caldwell's the option at that point. But Tepper's got to keep his hand off the reset button. I don't care if you go 1-15 next year. That coach has to coach a second year there, or like
Yeah.
you're. It
Or
is what it is.
no one will take that job. Then it
No,
becomes almost untouchable.
you're only hiring from within at that point. One, because that's the only guys that'll take it, and it's also the only guys you can probably fucking pay at that point.
Yeah.
Like you might already be there. So
All right, let's jump into the next one here. The Broncos comeback. We touched on it a little bit in the first episode, but
mhm.
um, six straight for them.
Yeah,
This season looked like a disaster, and now they
they're
potentially could be a playoff team.
they're 7-5. They started the year 1-5. They won 6 straight. 7-5 now. It was an ugly win against Minnesota, but a win nonetheless. Um, yeah, who would have thought?
I think this is. I want to give big credit here to Sean Payton, right? Because we
Uh-huh.
talked a lot about, hey, if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be Sean Payton, right? He's going to be the guy that's going to turn this team around. Um, to start off as bad and as slow as they did, right? They started off what it was at 1-5,
1-5.
yeah, 1-5, and then they've
Yeah,
won the last five here. Um, he has really turned the ship around, right? And it took time, right? They had to let go of some veterans on defense because, they weren't buying in. Sean Payton's had success outside of Drew Brees, right? That's the one thing I think is a little bit of a misnomer with him is like, oh, he struggles without, like, who is he without Drew Brees? It's like he won 4 games with Teddy Bridgewater and took
yep,
Jameis Winston. They made the playoffs with Jameis Winston as their quarterback, right? Like this guy is a really stable, good NFL head coach. And, he is not getting the most necessarily out of Russell Wilson because I think he is getting the most out of this team is what I'm
yeah.
leaning.
And
And
yeah, go ahead.
he has to do that by minimizing Russell Wilson's role in it, right? He's going to make him run a little bit more, play outside the pocket, let Russ kind of be Russ, but it's going to be behind the offensive run game.
And I think, and that's the thing that I've seen is like, I saw play in this last game where, it was good protection, kind of breaks down. He gets out, escapes one, escapes two, corner of the end zone, touchdown. I was like, that's Seattle Russ, right? Like, that is let Russ cook. That's what we're used to. So, like, I feel like he's kind of winding back the clock with the play style. The numbers have been there all year, right? Like, every Broncos fan in the world screaming it from the rooftops because he had comparable stats to Patrick Mahomes after 6 weeks, even though they were 1-5. Doesn't matter unless you're winning games. Guess what? They're fucking winning games now.
Yeah.
Like, and he's playing well. Sean Payton, I agree. Like, they bought in. Like, they got rid of Randy Gregory and their defense got better.
Yeah.
That's not supposed to happen, right? Like, so all props in the world to both of them because if nothing else, right, you don't want to give Russ any credit on the field. Cool. He's not being a jackass in front of a microphone. So I mean that's a plus, right? Like I haven't heard Broncos Let's Ride once this year. Good on you, Russ. I'm proud of you, buddy. You're staying out of the spotlight. That is a win in of itself a lot of the times when it comes to him, especially as of late.
And that's a shame because that was like maybe one of my favorite things in the world to
It
say was
was. I
Bron-
want you to know that every time I'm opening manager, I still write "Let's Ride" in the bottom of the breakout.
yeah.
Every time before I make the copies, everybody. I've only had like two people ask, like, "What is this? Why does this say Let's Ride on our fucking daily schedule?"
To kind of give people like the gist of what would happen is we would go into work and we'd have like the morning kind of like they called it a huddle, right? It was a
Yeah,
morning like quick little huddle here, and we'd go, the opening manager would, give their spiel of like, hey, this is what's going on today, these are the expectations, yada yada, and we'd go around the circle and it'd be like anything to add. And we have one of our old coworkers was not a football fan,
not
and
at all.
I just made him out to be like the biggest Russell Wilson fan ever. I don't know why. I think
We just started the rumor.
I just started the rumor, and I think I hung a Russell Wilson picture inside of his locker. I don't know if it's still there or not.
It's on the outside of his locker, and it's
Oh,
still there.
it's still there.
Yes.
And so every morning I would just say Broncos country, let's ride. Like I would just say
Yep.
let's ride in huddle, and it was just an ongoing joke that never seemed to die for some reason. But
No, and it's still on. I think he's got even like a little Russell Wilson keychain hung up
I
on
gave
the
that
inside.
to him.
Yeah, it's hung up on the inside of his locker. The picture's on the outside of his locker. I'm still writing on the breakouts. It's a good time still.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what like it fit, especially like it fits now. Like once everybody left, and it's a little bit more difficult. Like we just went through Black Friday, right? Christmas time in retail. Like that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like the Nathaniel Hackett led Broncos, where you're like, this place feels like it's on fire. I don't want to be here. Let's ride. That's just fucking let's ride.
Let's ride, baby. You got nothing to lose. Let's ride. That's all you can do sometimes.
Just gotta get through the day, man. Just gotta get through the day.
Listen, we all go through streaks like that. But back to the Broncos here. Their coming weeks will tell us a lot about this team, about how real it is.
How are you gonna finish?
Yeah, how are you gonna finish, right? Can you kind of ride this wave off? They've got the Texans, Chargers, Lions, Patriots, Chargers, Raiders, right? So Texans, obviously a very good team.
Yep.
Chargers, who knows when they're going to wake up and turn it on. Maybe they will. Maybe they might not. Could go either way there. Lions is a very legitimate team. Patriots, Raiders are kind of, I don't know. Patriots, I hope they lose that game. I'd love for them to lose that game. And then the Raiders, we'll see. You know what I mean?
Depends on the Antonio Pierce if they can keep them bought in as well. It's one of those. The Raiders and the Chargers games feel like it's all up to the Broncos because you can beat that team by 20. You can beat them by 3 touchdowns if you want to go in there. But if you walk in there thinking that you're high and mighty, I think they could lose all 3 of those matchups. Truthfully.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm very curious to see what this Bronco team's, especially after another year where Sean Payton's able to kind of, build the roster the way that he wants to build it. Because there's a lot of disappointing pieces, right? Patrick Surtain has not been himself.
Yeah.
And he's had a disappointing season. Jerry Jeudy has never really lived up to what we expected him to be. Cortland Sutton, had the
Cortland Sutton's kicking it on this year. I think that's the one you're like, finally, Jesus, thank you.
He's
other
better
than that,
he's been, but yeah, other than that, there's still some kind of unknowns with this team. I'm curious to see how Peyton ends up building it out.
Yeah, Mr. Javonte Williams lover himself has been kind of disappointed there this year. Like he hasn't taken the step that I thought he would too.
And he's healthy too. Like he didn't completely destroy a ligament in his body.
Yeah, hasn't torn an ACL or anything. Samaje Perine's stealing snaps just because he knows how to pass block. Fucking Samaje Perine.
Samaje Perine, man.
Like it's so fitting that a guy with like that memorable of a name. I legitimately think if he wasn't so good in pass pro, he would not have an NFL roster spot. But
he was the best blocker on the Bengals for a while.
He arguably might be like the best pass blocking running back in NFL history. And he's making a career of it. Like props to him. He's still got a fucking roster spot.
Samaje Perine said, "So we don't have fullbacks anymore. What about a running back who maybe isn't a great running back, but a great pass blocker?"
Yeah,
and everyone's like, "I'd buy that."
Like I'd buy it. That's a damn good deal. Like 3rd and 12. Like he becomes such a great third down back because he's not a terrible receiver, but also like third and long, fucking six blocker. He's right here. He's
Yeah.
literally better than our right guard. He's standing right next to me.
So crazy to say, like we value guys who are like weapons in the passing game, like CMC, like guys who can catch the ball out of the backfield. And it's like a guy like P Ryan is almost I hate to say he's almost as valuable
That's right.
as Christian McCaffrey, but it's like comparable
It
because
is.
yeah, he gives you that six blocker there, and it's like that matters, right? Like it matters if you're if you have a good tight end, which I don't think the Broncos really do, but you know what
No.
I mean? It allows that tight end to now become the weapon, and he becomes that six blocker. So
That and then even on like again those third and 12s or even your second and 12s, right? Where you're like trying to make it third and manageable, like
yeah,
when you're able to drop back and you're like, I've got a fucking the best. I literally have a personal pump protector fucking in my backfield with me right now. Like it's a game changer. It really is. Like
yeah, makes a difference. So
it does.
all right, I want to. I think this is a topic that you and I would be really good at, and that's why I have it on here. Landing spots for Justin Fields next year, right? I think
Ooh.
with how bad Carolina is, they're going to be in the running for Drake May or Caleb Williams. I think Chicago gets one. I think ultimately, I think it ends up being New England who gets the other. Um, maybe the Giants sneak their way in there, but the Giants beat the Patriots this year. Thumbs up to that. Big fan of that. Suck it.
Thanks, Tommy DeVito.
Have fun with Tommy DeVito and Daniel Jones next year, you idiots.
Yeah.
So I think Justin Fields is playing well enough to at least deserve another shot at the very least.
100%. Yeah.
Like I don't think he's Mac Jones level, right? Where I don't know if Mac Jones might be a backup somewhere. Somebody will take a flyer on him, but I don't think he's going to necessarily somebody's going to trade for him to be the guy. Um, I had some spots that I thought you would also find super fun for Justin Fields. The first one I had the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Um. God, I don't want that, Devin. The main one to jump off of Justin Fields, I'll come right back to him. The main one I don't want, keep Kirk Cousins away from fucking. I don't want it. I keep Kirk Cousins out of Pittsburgh. I'm gonna fucking lose it because that team I think becomes very dangerous. Truthfully,
That's
especially
a
with
good team.
the way that he was playing. Right,
Yeah.
Justin Fields to Pittsburgh. Probably exactly what he needs: stability. Right. Hey, this head coach literally is going to be here as long as he wants to be. Like, we're not going to fire him. He could literally go 0-16 twice in a row, and then we might talk about it after that. Like, get some stability. The roster's not terrible. Maybe his legs can bring some juice back to a Najee Harris that's just absolutely fucking been disappeared and honestly been shoved out by Jalen Warren.
Yeah, I was like Jalen Warren's balling this year. Like
Yeah, Jalen Warren's had a great season, and it's been at Najee Harris's expense, right? So maybe he can bring some juice back to Najee's legs. But I mean, George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Pat Fryermuth, the offensive line still kind of sucks. He's gonna have to get over that fact. Definitely not a bad fit. There is one team that came to mind, but I'm sure that we're gonna talk about them. So I'm gonna let you run through your list.
Yeah, the next one I have, and honestly, I think it's the most realistic and the most likely, is the Atlanta Falcons. I
Fair.
think I think that's a team that it makes almost too much sense for them.
Especially with if Arthur Smith's the head coach next year.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
a team they're consistently a borderline playoff team. They either make the playoffs at 9 or 8 wins, or they just miss the playoffs
At 7 or 8.
at 7 or 8, and their draft pick is never good enough to get one of these guys. They're a team that could go out, hey, here's a second rounder for them, and
Yep.
let's
And
see
it's
what we got.
it's pick 40. Like you're like, okay, that's not. You could get a damn good player at
Pick 40
45,
is like the eighth. Yeah, it'd be like more like
45,
45.
50. Still, you're like some damn good players available at
It,
50.
it would be in the 40s for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would at 40s or 50s. But yeah, it would be. I think it would be good return on the value for Justin Fields, right? Like
Yeah.
you look at guys who were given up on. Josh Rosen got a second from Miami. Am I missing somebody? Trey Lance literally got
Was a
nothing
fourth.
with a fourth rounder for Trey
Yeah.
Lance. So, uh, Yeah, I think if you get a second, you feel good, right? I think if you're Chicago, you feel good. It helps you fill another hole there. Um, I think that is a team that would feel really good about having Justin Fields there.
Yeah, and the only thing that scares me there is the possibility. Again, him with Arthur Smith, I like a lot. I think Arthur Smith and his run game offense. Justin Fields and Bijan Robinson a read option is a fucking Madden nightmare,
Yeah,
and
it
like
is.
that's terrifying. That's terrifying for me to play against, right? Um, they still have the weapons. Again, the offensive line not as bad as Pittsburgh's. Chris Lindstrom is a fucking mauler on the inside. They've got a couple pieces on the O line. Talented as fucking ever at the skill positions, right? Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, like they've got guys. So the stability at head coach is still there in question because, in my opinion, Arthur Smith should be on the hot seat, or at least he's not like completely out of the question of being on the hot seat, right? So that's my only concern. But yeah, him in that offense, I think, would make a lot of sense. It's still not the team that first came to my mind, truthfully.
What's the first team that came to your mind? I'm just curious.
Seattle. We
They
just
were
talked about,
Yeah, I had them on my list. I had them a little bit lower. Um,
and we're talking about possibly replacing Geno, right? Talented skill players, right? Probably one of the best twos in the game. DK Metcalf, they just drafted JSN, Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker, steady head coach. O line, still not great. Better than Chicago's, but not hard to do. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Makes a lot of sense there as well. Like, I definitely think what he needs most, like, if Justin Fields could pick, the top of my wish list is head coach stability. I need a guy that is going to be here. I've had 3 head coaches in 3 years, and I am sick of relearning names, doing all of this stuff every year. I'm trying to relearn a playbook. I need a guy that, like if I get a shot for 2 years, I need the same head coach both years, right? And I need it to be no question, right? And I think Arthur Smith, there's a small question mark at least, right? Mike Tomlin, question mark's not even in the dictionary. I think same thing for Pete Carroll. I don't think they're moving off him in the next 2 years, especially if they're trying to give Justin Fields a shot.
Yeah, no, I like the fit there. Everywhere else I had was kind of a little bit of a stretch, to be honest with you. I'll just throw these names out here. I had the Rams as a potential fit. I just don't know if Stafford's going to come back and play another year.
I
He's
don't.
not really the type of quarterback that McVay traditionally goes for, but it just might
Yeah.
be somebody who is obtainable for McVay to get his hands on. You know what I mean? More
Yeah,
than
and if
more than
if
anything else.
McVay's trying to switch it up and add some dimensions to his playbook, like Justin Fields is one of those guys that if you give him a good offensive head coach, like I think McVay could get the most out of him, right? Like it's not like McVay's going to get Justin Fields and be like, "You're never leaving the pocket." No,
Right.
my Sean McVay is smart enough to be like, "All right, we're going to do some different stuff, right? We've got to get your legs involved because it is one of your best assets, right? One of those younger coaches." Whereas, not that Bill would do this, but you stick him with the 70-year-old head coach who's like, don't you fucking leave the pocket or you're cut. Right? Like,
Yep.
not going to fucking do that to Justin Fields.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the best fit, but not the worst. I had the Titans on the list. I don't know how well Levis Will Levis is actually going to be to like. Do
Yeah.
they not think about trying to bring another quarterback in? And it could be, he's dynamic enough. Maybe he takes some of the load off of Derrick Henry at the same time, and
Yeah.
that
That's a
run
scary
game.
read option. Like, that's a scary
Yeah,
backfield.
that's a backfield I thought could be at least entertaining. And then the Raiders is a team that I had on that list. Who knows what the direction that the Raiders go in. I
Yeah.
don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is a part of that. I'm like 90% sure he's going to get cut
Who
after
would
his
have
second.
thought? Who would have thought it wouldn't fucking work out? It's crazy.
So, um,
Guy couldn't win with the goddamn Niners. Why did we think he was going to succeed elsewhere?
he won with the Niners. I don't think that's necessarily fair to say, but
You
he
get
won.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know what you were saying. He wasn't a legit
He
part of
got to
that.
the Super Bowl with the Niners, like it's the fucking Niners. There's obviously going to be a drop off here.
Alrighty. Next thing, uh, I want to talk about this quickly. I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on it. Aaron Rodgers practiced today, um, which is just wild to see him out there.
The fact that that's a sentence is fucking insane.
Yeah, he's been cleared for all football activities. So I don't know if
Jesus.
that means he's cleared to like play necessarily, but yeah, he has been cleared to play. I don't think he plays this season.
The
Just
Jets
because
aren't good enough.
the Jets aren't good enough. I don't think it's worth trotting him out there just for him to get hurt and then it costs you more of your season. So I don't see a world where he actually plays this year, but it is nuts that he's at least out there practicing. Um, and he'll probably practice with them for the rest of the season. And they're a team that's going to go out and spend big money on a backup this year. I would almost guarantee you that they're going to get some kind of reinsurance on a decent backup.
The fact that they didn't last off season is still one of the biggest blunders because if they had, and it's not even that they had to go out and get somebody crazy. If they re-signed Mike White last year, Aaron Rodgers is probably playing in 2 weeks, and they're probably in the wild card round.
Yeah,
If he, as long as he doesn't get hurt again, right? Like they are re-signing Mike White away from making the playoffs, and Aaron Rodgers winning comeback play, like being out and then winning comeback player of the year from returning from an Achilles in what was it, like 80 days. Like that's and I think it's just a fun tidbit. I remember them, it's been a month or so since they mentioned it on the Pat McAfee show when they really started to kind of ramp up about him possibly coming back. Like if this works for him and he doesn't get hurt again throughout the rest of the year, like I think there's a serious chance that he gets the Tommy John treatment, right? They were talking about that on the McAfee show that like if this works, 10 years down the line, be like, oh yeah, he tore his Achilles week 1, he's back out there week 12, he got the A-Rod surgery or whatever they end up calling it. Like
yeah,
it's this is groundbreaking stuff. Like every source that is close to sports, in sports, or had the injury themselves say that the Achilles is the hardest tendon tear to rebound from. And he has done it. He's done it in record time for any tendon tear, let alone the hardest one to come back from. You don't get back from ACLs, MCLs, PCLs this fast. And he's like, fuck all those. I'm going to take the one that's harder and come back in still half the time. It's insanity. Like, it's nuts. It's the fact that he is practicing blows my
crazy.
mind.
Yeah.
It's insanity.
I just wanted us to touch on it because I felt like it was important. All right, we're going to jump into our bets of the week here. If you or anyone you know is struggling with a gambling addiction, contact the Problem Gambling Helpline at 800-522-4700. Professionals are available 24 hours a day to take your call. Help is available at no cost to the problem gambler or their concerned others. We're going to keep the recap a little bit quicker. Obviously, these games happened 3 weeks ago now.
Well, yeah, by the time you listen to this, 3, yeah.
By the time you listen to this, it'll be 3 weeks ago. I love that you said that, as people aren't going to listen to it tomorrow.
True.
Same
You're
thing.
you're right. You're right.
But I had a terrible week 1 and 2. Texans -4.5. I got early in the week. That line went up to 5.5. I bet it. It's crazy. I bet it twice on 2 different apps, but I bet the -4.5, and then I bet the +5.5 later in the week, and they both hit, which is fucking insane. Because I liked the 5.5 line. I thought it was too much. I thought the 4.5 line was about right. But that one was my only hit for the week. I had Steelers +1.5 versus the Browns. They lost by 3. I had the Seahawks -1 versus the Rams. They lost by 1. So close bets, but wrong still. So
quickly before I forget, did you update the records after you punched these up?
okay. Yep.
Because I thought I was 29-1 after the week that we both went 3-0, but I could be. Oh, maybe I was 17-1.
You were 17. Yeah. You were 17.
Fucking insane year. Jesus Christ. It clicked in my head that I'm 9-0 in my last 9 picks. Jesus Christ. Didn't bet a single actual dollar on it. You're welcome.
Crazy to say out loud.
Yeah, it is. I had Pitt and Cleveland under 32.5. Thank you. AFC North unders and a well-coached team versus one of the best defenses in the league versus 2 quarterbacks that aren't great. Minnesota +2.5 versus Denver. They only lost by 1. Thank you very much. Josh Dobbs had a horrible game, but they held in there. Didn't lose by more than 2.5. I'll take it. I just flipped apps instead of tabs. Whoopsie daisy. Vegas +12.5 versus Miami. still looking back on it, that was a dumb bet, but they only lost by 7.
Yeah.
3-0 week again. I'll
It was
take it.
That was a crazy bet in the moment where I was like, man, I can't believe he's betting that.
I can't believe he's touching. I think that's probably the first time either of us has ever touched a double-digit line on the show before.
Yeah, I hate lines like that.
Yeah, we're both pretty standard practice. Anything minus or plus 9.5 or more, we're like, fuck it, I'm not touching
it. No way.
Yep.
He can't.
And tell you what,
it's such a large quantity of like just
It
in a
is.
football game that like they talk about. I know it's like such a cliche to be like football is a game of inches. Well, it literally is.
It is.
And then when you say, hey, we're going to give a team a 10-point advantage and you have to decide between the two of it, I'm like, fuck that. Like, there's just
I don't want to.
way. Yeah, I don't want to touch that. Like, there's just no shot you're ever going to make me sit here and go, God, that team's that bad that you're going to give them 2 whole touchdowns. And then it's like, oh, it's a 7-point game. It's like, it's why I never touch those lines in a million years. Because I think the NFL's close. And I guess getting the points is nice, but at the same, well, another random jump cut from us. I think the program we're recording on must be having issues. We're both staying connected to the call and just randomly dropping. So sorry for like the random absurd, just like us dropping off and us jumping back in here. But it's one of those things. There's nothing we can do about it. So, you know, Broncos country, let's ride.
Let's ride.
But my bets this week are going to be the Falcons -1.5 versus the Jets. I hate it.
You're
but
back.
At the same time, I'm back, man. I just think the Falcons are too good to not take a line like this.
I debated Jets +1.5.
Wow.
But Tim Boyle.
That's what's pushing me. Like, I dislike Tim Boyle so much that I'll take the Jets.
I cannot believe I'm going to say this, but Zach Wilson starts this game, I'm going Jets.
I think about it. He's just as bad. I don't know.
I don't think he at least didn't turn the ball over as much as Boyle did, but continue.
That's true. I have Broncos +3.5 versus the Texans. Again, I know this seems like a little wild, right? Like, normally I'm a big Texans guy. I think the Texans are a good team. I think these teams are closer than 3.5. This is me betting a number rather than betting with feelings.
Okay.
I think this game in reality should be more of like a 2 or a 1. And if you're going to give me the extra 1.5, I'm going to take it in a case like this.
Yeah.
The +3.5 is just too much of a number for me to not take it on that side. I love the Texans could easily lose this game as much as they could win it. Like, I think this game is a pick'em if I've ever seen a pick'em. And if you're going to give me more than a field goal for the Broncos, I just like those numbers.
That's fair. Yeah, like Texans game-winning field goal here is very, very much on the table, I think.
Yeah, it wouldn't.
And it covers you, whether they're down 1, 2, or 3. Like, you're covered.
If a team wins this game by 2 scores, I'd be shocked. Like, is what I'm really trying to say here. And like,
I'd be
2 scores is the ceiling, is in my opinion. I think like this is a 10 to a 7-point game. I think 10 to 3 points is kind of where that line is, so I'll take the 3.5.
blame you.
Last pick for me here, Cardinals +5.5 versus the Steelers. I think this is a slight overreaction to how good the Steelers played and a little bit of an underreaction to how close that Cardinals game was. So I like the Cardinals. And again, I mean, as good as the Steelers offense has been, they still didn't put up very many points, right?
No. 400 yards, and they only put up 17 points in that game.
So if we're going to sit here... Oh, okay.
No, continue. Sorry, I forgot to talk about the Bengals earlier, but I'm also going to talk about them in mine too. So
okay. So yeah, I mean, if a team is consistently putting up around 20 or so points, and you're going to give another team +5.5 against them, again, like, I just like the odds that the Cardinals either win this game or it's a close game, and the Cardinals, the +5.5 pushes them over.
I love how we're sitting here talking about Geno getting replaced. Apparently, he and DK are absolutely lighting up the Cowboys right now on Thursday Night Football. So,
are they really?
Yeah. Geno Smith has 3 TD passes and a rushing TD, and DK has all 3 of the touchdown catches from him too. So.
Oh my God. Oh, it's a really close game. Holy shit.
It is. It's a damn good game.
38-35. Goddamn.
Hey guys, if you're listening to this, hop in your time machine, go watch Thursday Night Football. It was good this week.
It was good this week.
All right. So my picks this week: Detroit -4.5 versus New Orleans. If you're sitting here asking me to explain all three of these picks this week, firstly, I'm gonna say I'm 29-1. I don't have to explain shit. Okay, I'm riding with what feels right, and this feels right to me. Like the lines are rolling. Derek Carr sucks. I'm just betting on the Lions getting up and down the field on this team. It doesn't really matter. Like I truthfully think that Jared Goff could throw 3 touchdown passes on the first 3 drives of the game, and they could punt the rest of the game and still cover this line for me. Because Jesus Christ, the Saints cannot get in the end zone to save their lives. Alvin Kamara due for 6 touchdowns after me saying that? Probably. We'll see what happens. My second one, I kind of did this a little bit more on the fly this week, but again, we were talking about it a bit, and I do feel confident here. I have San Francisco -2.5 versus Philly. Asinine that Philly is a 2.5 point underdog at home as the best record in the NFL at 9-1, but here we are. And you made the comparison. I think it was off the air, or maybe on one of the 4 recordings we've done at this point, that the Eagles just get it done, right? They're a lot like those old Patriots teams. You're like, man, they should have won by 40. Hey, guess what? They still won, right? Whether it was by 4, by 40, by 14, whatever it was, they got the job done. I really think this Niners team is like, I don't know if they're just better, but I just see them winning this game, right? Like it just feels like Kyle Shanahan gets the job done. You're betting on the Eagles defense getting the job done. I'm kind of betting on Kyle Shanahan out coaching Nick Sirianni in this game. And 2.5 is not a crazy point total either way for these teams. I think it's close. Like it's close enough either way, right? Where I could see San Francisco touching here. Before I get to my last pick, and you'll see why I did not end up taking this game. I really like Jacksonville -8.5 versus Cincinnati as well. It's a large line. I wanted to talk about this a bit earlier, so I'll jam it into the bet section here. I remember we talked about it. We texted back and forth about it a hair. Like Zach Taylor, like Joe Burrow getting hurt may have saved Zach Taylor from the hot seat or being fired or this, that, and the other.
For sure.
And felt like a bit of an overreaction from myself, right? Just because I wasn't a huge Zach Taylor fan, this, that, or the other. But after watching Jake Browning against the Steelers on Sunday, I will tell you that like it made me feel like I wasn't crazy because you had 10 days to get Jake Browning ready for a well-coached but not a great Steelers team, right? And they had 25 rushing yards and 10 first downs in that game total. Cincinnati looked awful. And again, Joe Burrow didn't look great with that team. What did you expect from Jake Browning? I don't know. Competence, at least. And I didn't see it from Cincinnati, right? So this is a game where I feel like Jacksonville might be able to blow it open. I'm not taking them -8.5 in this game because my last pick is Miami -9.5 versus the Washington Commanders. Again, we just went on a whole spiel. Can't believe that it's going to be back-to-back weeks for us making picks that I'm going to near a 10-point favorite here. And I'm picking against the points here, right? I'm picking Miami to win by 10. Here's the thing. If you were to sit down and try to pick the most consistent offense this year in the NFL, maybe not by scoring, but by yardage, it's the Miami Dolphins, right? They had a hiccup against the Bills early on. They didn't play great against the Chiefs in Germany. Other than that, they've gotten up and down the field, right? Devon Achane's back. Tyreek Hill's good. Tua's healthy. This team is living and dying by its offense. Guess where Washington ranks in yardage allowed by a defense this year?
Probably 7th.
They are dead effing last in yards
Really?
allowed by defense. Yeah. The Chargers are 31 and they are 32. They have allowed the most yards by a team this year. And when I'm looking at that team that scored 70 earlier on this year, I know it's 10 points. I know it's going to be a tough thing to cover because yardage doesn't always equal points. We just talked about that with the Steelers, but
Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Tim here. If you've made it to the end of this episode, we greatly appreciate it. We were having so many issues with our recording software. We have no idea why it just kept randomly cutting out because our calls stayed together, but the recording would just die all of a sudden on us. So apologize for that. But that's why this episode kind of abruptly ends. So if you're one of our, loyal listeners, we greatly appreciate it. I am in, you know, today's clothes from yesterday, so that's why I look a little bit different. I just got off work and didn't have the time to try to piece this mammoth together. So but yeah, we appreciate it, and thanks for listening.